Hello everyone! Today we're going to be jumping back into Standard with a Gruff Triplets deck. Now Gruff Triplets is one of my favorite new cards from Wilds of Eldraine. It is a 6-mana 3/3 creature with Trample, but when it enters the battlefield it's going to create 2 tokens that are copies of it. So that's essentially a 6-mana 9/9. Kind of. And then, of course, whenever one of the Gruff Triplets dies, we get to put a number of +1/+1 counters equal to its power on each other creature named Gruff Triplets. So if one dies, we're going to have 2 6/6s, and so on and so forth. So this can get out of control really fast, especially if we're stacking multiples on the battlefield. So I spent a lot of time thinking about what deck would be the best deck to include this, right? We want to be taking advantage of those death triggers, and we want to have a fairly aggressive game plan. And so I've come up with slotting this into the popular Golgari fighting deck. So in our 1-mana slot, we've got Bushwhack and Tailswipe. These are some solid fight spells. Tailswipe has the added addition of giving +1/+1 if cast during a main phase as well, which is going to help both Gruff Triplets out, as well as some of our other cards that we'll be fighting with. We have Armored Scrapgorger as our ramp piece. That's going to be very strong in the early game for getting us to 4 mana as quickly as possible, and 2 copies of Misery Shadow. This is just going to be a good blocker for us, help dissuade our opponent from attacking us. In the 3-mana slot, we've got 2 Graveyard Trespassers, help deal with creatures in our opponent's graveyards, have that potential to go ahead and flip as well, be a slightly better blocker for us. And then Glissa Sunslayer, which has a whole slew of effects, all of which are going to be fairly powerful for us. And of course, being a first strike death touch creature, this is going to be an insane attacker and blocker for us. Now we get up into the 4-mana slot where we get kind of the cores of our deck. We really do want to have a ton of mana out on the battlefield, so Invasion of Zendikar is great for ramp. We also have Phyrexian Obliterator. Now this is perfectly paired with our fight spells. Notably, if our opponent has a big creature and we go ahead and fight that with Phyrexian Obliterator, all of a sudden they're going to have to sacrifice a ton of permanents, and that's going to be great for us. We also have 4 copies of Sheoldred the Apocalypse, really just going to punish our opponent for drawing cards, gaining some life to help us stabilize, and being a death touch creature, it's going to be great fighting as well. Gruff Triplets, we've already talked about what that does. And then, of course, for the late game, we have 2 copies of Virtue of Persistence. Now, this card, it functions as a removal spell early, so it's sorcery, -3/-3 for a creature, not too bad. But then, if we do go ahead and play it on its enchantment side, we get to pull a creature from our graveyard to the battlefield under our control each turn. This synergizes really well with the Gruff Triplets, where we can then block with or fight and kill the actual card, Gruff Triplets, leaving the tokens, then getting it back for 2 more tokens, which is really just going to spiral out of control really quickly. Also, just getting back Phyrexian Obliterator, Sheoldred, Glissa, or any of our high-value creatures is going to be very powerful in the late game. Over in the mana base, we have 1 copy of Boseiju, as well as 4 copies of the new Restless Cottage. It is a tap land, but being able to turn into a 4/4 is going to be pretty good for us. It also gives us additional ways to exile our opponent's graveyard. Now, if you guys have been enjoying my content, make sure you subscribe to the channel to stay up to date on my latest videos. And if you do enjoy this video, make sure you give it a like. Let's go ahead and see how this deck does. Alright, looks like we're on the play here, and honestly, this looks like a pretty good starting hand, so we'll go ahead and keep. Since we are on the play, I am going to go ahead and start with that Death Cap Blade. No reason to use Bushwhack for finding that additional land just yet. We do find a second land, which puts us in a great position. We're going to play out the Armored Scrapgorger here. This is going to give us access to 4 mana next turn for Sheoldred. If we lose the Scrapgorger to a burn spell, we just have Glissa instead as a backup, which is going to be really strong. Alright, well, if that's the case, we'll just go ahead and block the 2 damage. And now let's get down Sheoldred. Now, life gain is the bane of red decks, and as long as our opponent can't remove this Sheoldred, we're going to be in a really good spot. Next turn, I think we go Glissa, then Virtue, get rid of Feldon, perhaps? But we'll see. We've got choices. We can use Bushwhack as fighting with the Sheoldred. Mechanized Warfare, sure. Alright, so now we have an interesting choice. I think we're going to just start by attacking with the Sheoldred. We'll do this. Yeah, we'll do this first. get some extra damage through, and then trying to decide on what's going to be the best course of action here. I think we're going to go ahead, kill the Feldon, gain some extra life. We could play out the Cottage, but I do want Glissa in play, so we will do that. Now, we're going to leave the Feldon, get rid of our opponent's land. The reason we're leaving the Feldon is because we have Graveyard Trespasser in this deck, so I do want to leave creatures in graveyards if possible. This deck also won't have a way of recurring the Feldon, so I'm feeling pretty okay about that. Now, Phoenix Chick is a different story. Since it has the ability to leave the graveyard, I would be okay exiling that, if given the option. Alright, well, let's go ahead, Restless Cottage here. Now, we could use Bushwhack as a fight. I think we just save it for now. Right now, we've got tons of life. We're in a pretty good spot. Let's just attack with Sheoldred, keep putting pressure on our opponent's life total. We can tap the Armored Scrapgorger, exile a card from a graveyard. Okay, Squeak, that's fine. Yep. We'll just block here. We're down at 12. We find ourselves a backup Sheoldred. Opponent says good game here. Curious as to why. I think we'll fight with Sheoldred. I think we kill the Squee. Let's go ahead and swing out. Yeah, they won't have the life gain to get around Sheoldred, and I don't think they have the removal for Sheoldred on their upkeep. That's why they're saying that. So yeah, looks like we've got it. Alright, going out with style and the Lightning Strike to the face. Off to a great start. Alright, and here we are on the play. This actually looks really good, so we'll go ahead and keep. We've got early ramp with this guy. Let's go ahead and start with our swamp, though. We want to be playing our black sources before our green sources. Go ahead, get this guy down. I'm okay taking the 1 life as well. If we draw a swamp next turn, we're going to play this. The goal is to get Obliterator on curve with this mana base, so we do kind of lean away from our only green-colored lands. That being said, we will play this next turn if we have to, which we will. Let's go ahead and play out a Glissa. Now, of course, if we do find one more black land, we can play out Obliterator and use Tail Swipe for sacrifices. That's going to be really strong for us. Sure, Glissa dies, that's fine. They'll swing out with the Underdog. Alright, Scrapgorger number 2 is actually going to be the best for us, so we'll go ahead and do that. This is going to set us up for an Obliterator and Fighting turn. We also get that if they remove one of these and we find ourselves another land.
Happy to help, but I'm
Discards a card. We're gonna go ahead and discard the Graveyard Actually, we should discard Gruff Triplets here. I'm a little over-eager to hold on to that card because I know it's gonna stabilize us in the late game, but I think just with the Obliterator fighting, we're gonna be in a really strong spot next turn. So our opponent's gonna have to sacrifice 3 permanents, so my guess is Lily and 2 lands. So let's go ahead and get this done. Obliterator, autopay. So opponent has breached the multiverse, so we're gonna go ahead and unfortunately exile our creatures out of our graveyard. And we go Tail Swipe, fight. Yep. Opponent's gonna have to sacrifice 3 permanents. There's no way they just pick all 3 lands and keep the Liliana. I guess they do? That's fine. They can have us sacrifice one of our Scrap Gorgers, but right now we are at an insane advantage. Next turn we go for the Invasion.
You won't be
Or we
outsmarting
go
me.
for the Graveyard Trespasser. Yeah, I think we'll discard the Graveyard Trespasser. Okay, so first and foremost, we're gonna move to combat, kill Liliana.
This isn't
Alright,
how things were
now let's
supposed to
go Invasion of Zendikar. We're gonna go ahead and start exiling the Tenacious Underdog. Alright, we're gonna grab some more black lands, because we already have a forest. And honestly, I'm okay tapping this down as well to grab the other Tenacious Underdog, give our opponent less in their graveyard. Not that it matters, because they only have one land. But things are looking pretty good for us. Yep, seems like we've got it. Alright, here we are on the play. Now this actually looks pretty good. I'm gonna go ahead and keep this. It is unfortunate that we have two forests, so we won't really have all the black lands that we need for the Phyrexian Obliterator. That being said, we are gonna speedrun our way towards Invasion of Zendikar to try and make up for that. Either way, we'll get our Gruff Triplets down pretty soon. We're gonna go ahead and play this, play our Invasion. We're gonna get two black lands. So now we can play out Gruff Triplets next turn, which is already going to be really big for us. We've done a ton of ramping. I am a little bit nervous about our opponent having counter spells. I think we go Sheoldred here. This will let us know if our opponent has a counter spell. They'll use it here. Okay, seems like they don't. Maybe they have removal, maybe they have bounce. I don't know, but either way, they're going to start taking damage here, and Sheoldred's going to start giving us some life. Yep. Alright, so opponent doesn't have the removal either, so I'm curious as to what they're trying to do here. Alright, we're going to go for the Gruff Triplets. And then we're not going to overinvest in our board here. We'll leave the Invasion up because we can flip the Invasion later when our board's creature light. Again, I want to play around a potential board wipe from our opponent. I'm going to swing in with Sheoldred. Get that damage. Maybe it's a Wandering Emperor. Nope, Otawara to return Sheoldred. Honestly, that's fine. We have all of our triplets. Now, we can do an interesting thing if our opponent plays a creature. I mean, we get to choose between fighting with Gruff Triplets and fighting with the Obliterator. Okay, yeah, so I know exactly what type of deck this is. They're going to be playing towards hitting us with board wipes and things like that, so we do want to kind of rush down as much early damage as we can. Let's start by moving to combat. Do we want to flip this? They would have used the board wipe if they had it, so we'll go ahead and flip our Invasion for right now. Sure, we'll put that on top. It's a token, so it doesn't matter. We'll replay Sheoldred. And I'll play out a second Scrap Gorger here. And we'll end the turn. Now, the other thing that's big with decks like this is they do like recurring their spells from their graveyard back into their hand. Things like Witness the Future and Devious Cover-Up are going to be big spells for them. So we're definitely going to want to use our Armored Scrap Gorger to keep their graveyard light. Temporary Lockdown, yeah. Let's go ahead, add green mana. We'll go ahead, get rid of Union. Temporary Lockdown's going to get rid of that token and both of our creatures. I'm honestly fine with this. Or sorry, not the token, right? Because it's the token copy. Alright, we have a Tail Swipe as well. I think we just go full face here. See what our opponent has. Do we want to redraw Sheoldred? You can go ahead and put that on top. And we'll play an Obliterator. So now we're threatening lethal. Our opponent's gonna have to do something about that. If they wipe the board, we'll play Sheoldred next turn. Feels unlikely that they'll have multiple board wipes. Of course, if they do go ahead and play out their big whale, they're going to have to sacrifice 6 permanents, because we're going to go ahead and fight with the Obliterator. I'll pay that ward cost, for sure. It's definitely going to be a worthwhile trade. The other thing we can do is, since we have this instant speed ability to fight... Okay, well, so our opponent has to have some sort of combat trick here. We're going to go ahead, animate our cottage, and swing out. Let's go exile that, because we don't want them getting it back. I don't think they were expecting the cottage. Yeah, Obliterator can go on top. And we've got it. Alright. Alright, so we've got our opponent going first. Now, we can make a case for keeping this hand. Bushwhack will give us a black land. We're playing towards mid-range value. I think we'll keep this. We'll keep it. So we'll go ahead, Bushwhack, we'll search, and we'll find that black land that we're going to need. Alright, gonna discard a tail swipe here. I'm actually gonna go ahead and play this tapped cottage, since we have no other turn to play. This is setting us up to get the Sheoldred in a timely fashion. I think we play out Glissa before we play out the Graveyard Trespasser. Our opponent could have a removal spell. It seems like they're playing mono black, so it wouldn't surprise me. Alright, Phyrexian Obliterator. And of course, we almost have the ability to play our Phyrexian Obliterator. Though we will not attack, because we would have to sacrifice 3 permanents. Yep, so we'll just go ahead and wait back. Sheoldred is going to be a strong play for us. We sack Glissa here. Sheoldred's definitely more valuable. And opponent's just attacking with the Obliterator, which is fine. Alright, well, convenient enough for us, we're going to use Bushwhack to search. We're going to grab a black land. And now we're going to play out our own Obliterator. And I will attack with the Sheoldred. This is fine. If they chump block here, that's 1 less permanent that they'll have when they have to start sacrificing things to the Obliterator, and they're thinking about that now. Yep. Alright, so this puts us in a perfectly even position if we decide to trade Obliterators. Of course, the thing that they won't see coming is me tail swiping their Sheoldred with Phyrexian Obliterator next turn. Gain some life. Main phase, tail swipe. Opponent's gonna have to go ahead and sacrifice 4 permanents here, and it looks like we've got it. Alright, looks like we've got our opponent going first. This is a pretty good starting hand. We've got that Invasion of Zendikar. We've got multiple sources for all of our colors. All of our lands are going to be giving us black, so we're working towards that Phyrexian Obliterator. Early Misery, Shadow Strong. We can start with our Restless Cottage as well. Perfect, that's another black source, so we do have Obliterator on turn 4, if we want to. Virus Beetle, we're going to go ahead and discard Gruff Triplets. As much as I love the Gruff Triplets, we definitely aren't going to be able to cast it for a couple more turns. see. Looks like we're playing against a mono black deck very similar to that last one. Sure, Sheoldred's Edict. So this is telling me maybe we want to lean towards the invasion, though we do have double obliterators. Alright. Interesting. Okay. So I see what our opponent's doing here. With double Obliterators and double Sheoldred, we're going to go ahead and play out our Obliterator first. This is going to dissuade attackers way more than Sheoldred will. And now we're really going to be just going 1-for-1 on removal. Now that's a shame. Opponent is going to go ahead and see that other Obliterator in our hand and get rid of it. They'll also see that we have 2 Sheoldreds, though. And they did use their whole turn to do that. Now, Sheoldred is also going to be very large for us. Get to redraw a card. Bushwhack. That's not bad. Yep. I do want to see another land here, I think. Do I care about another land and more than I care about Sheoldred? I don't think so. We'll just play the Sheoldred. Opponent's gonna start losing life. We're gonna start gaining life. Discard a card. We'll discard one of our Bushwhacks. Again, our opponent would have used the removal spell if they had it. Okay, I think we just block the Scavengers here. We lose Sheoldred, and then we just replay her again next turn. Restless Cottage, replay Sheoldred. I feel like that's pretty good. We'll play our Invasion next turn, get some more lands. Thin out the deck just a little bit and try and secure some better draws as well. Phyrexian Arena. Now that is an interesting play into a Sheoldred. Let's go ahead and play our Invasion here. And we do have enough green mana, so we have enough black mana, so we'll just go double black here. It's going to be better for any Obliterator angles that we have. Now we could kill Tenacious Underdog here with Bushwhack. Might be worth it. Honestly, I think we do. They'll be able to blitz it back. If they do, they'll get to draw another card, lose another 2 life. I don't feel bad about that. Yep, lose 2 life, lose 2 life, lose 1 life. Losing. That was a pretty strong turn. They need a way to deal with this Sheoldred. Well, that is a way to deal with it. Reading what the cottage does, yep. Interesting. We're gonna go ahead and animate our cottage. We're gonna use Tail Swipe, kill Sheoldred. Now we can deal 5 damage to our opponent's face, but honestly I think it's going to be better and make things a little bit more resilient for us. Let's get rid of the Tenacious Underdog so they can't bring that back. If we go ahead and flip our Invasion here. And of course, I think we're just going to go ahead and use this mana for our food token, gain some of that life back, and things are looking good for us. Opponent's going to be losing life off of the arena as well. Graveyard Trespasser. Alright, not too concerned yet. Really, we're just going to be laying on the aggressive attacks for our opponent. So let's go ahead and animate a cottage. Move to combat. Attack with both of them. We'll get rid of the Scavengers. We have a food token now. We'll sack the food. Gain back the life we lost. Our opponent's faced with a difficult decision here. Okay, they do decide to kill the Awakened Skyclave. And I'm fine with that. Day is flipped to night. If we draw one more land, we can actually activate both cottages, swing for 8. We'll force a chump block, get 4 through. That's not terrible. Again, at this point, opponent sacrificed the Nightmare to scry. Seems like they're running out of options. Gruff Triplets is amazing here. Now, this is one of those reasons why I love including this card in the deck. Even if our opponent is able to remove the Gruff Triplets, it's going to make it stronger. There's no way our opponent has a board wipe. There's trample on all of these guys. They're split up against creatures. Yep. That's fine. Go ahead, destroy that Gruff Triplets. Now we have 2 6/6s. It's going to be even harder for our opponent. Next turn, we'll be swinging in with the Triplets, the Cottage. They definitely need to have removal, and it looks like they don't. Alright everybody, I hope you enjoyed. So as we saw, this deck is very powerful. If we're even ignoring the Gruff Triplets, which is a very fun new addition here, the core of the deck is very powerful. You have Phyrexian Obliterator and Fight spells, right? That'll end the game. Sheoldred is very powerful, attacking our opponent. Our opponent has to deal with this threat. Invasion of Zendikar is phenomenal ramp. If we do go ahead and flip it, we also get another Vigilance attacker that's really strong. We see that Restless Cottage actually put in a lot of work during our games. It's a great way to secure that lethal damage on our opponent. A lot of the times they won't expect it. Those food tokens also help us gain some life and stabilize, which is really powerful. So I would definitely say don't sleep on the creature lands. Aside from that, you know, we have the ability to exile creatures from graveyards with Armored Scrap Gorger. We didn't really see that come into play because we were able to beat our opponents before they ended up being able to do any of that reanimation type shenanigans, but it's still good to have that in our toolkit. We definitely were able to get rid of Tenacious Underdogs and things like that with adequate graveyard hate. Gliss is just a strong valued card. Now, we did not get to see the flip side of our Virtue over here, but that's still alright. Even as just the sorcery adventure, being able to kill one of our opponent's creature and gain some life is really powerful. And then, of course, Gruff Triplets. This is the whole reason why we're looking back at this deck. Very strong. If we're talking about opponents making us sacrifice creatures, we have 3 creatures, so it splits up the power. If we're talking about single target removal, it's only going to buff the other triplets. So this is very powerful, especially in that late game when both us and our opponents are running out of steam. You slam one of these down onto the battlefield, and that's almost going to certainly guarantee your win, except if your opponent has a board wipe. But again, a lot of the decks that are running board wipes, we can try and get around that by having other threats that they have to deal with and trying to empty their hand, turning it into more of a game of luck, see who draws more first. And of course, we have our Restless Cottages, which get around those board wipes by being 4/4 attackers on empty boards, which is very powerful. Now, if you did enjoy this video, make sure you give it a like, and if you have any ideas for another deck you'd like to see me play, why don't you let me know in a comment down below. I'll see you all next time.